Regina, thank you for that story. Now, our Focus on Business segment interview today, it's all about smart logistics and keenly focusing on the transport sector, which is very crucial, especially when it comes to the growth of the economy. Joining us this afternoon is the founder and chief executive officer of Alex Loads. That is Mr. Charles Through. Charles, thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, and maybe we start on that note. How is the sector faring on as we speak?
So right now, the logistics industry is starting to pick up. You know, I think since COVID, COVID, I like to say, was like the silver lining for logistics. Yes. That's when people started paying attention, like, how is our supply chain? How can we make it more resilient? So you're starting to see a lot of innovation in logistics now currently.
And maybe is that why we have seen many logistic firms such as yourself adopting smart solutions to stay awoke with the times, especially right now?
Yes, because whenever you look at, let's look at some of the challenges that affect Africa. You know, we were just covering some farmers. 50% of agricultural produce goes to waste due to poor supply chain. But also as logistics companies, the ones that are out there, freight forwarders and freight brokers, the margins are razor thin, so you can't afford to any operational costs that are necessary. So by adopting technology, and those efficiency tools, you're able to cut costs. That way you can operate more sustainably.
And of course, talking about some of the challenges, you do know that right now the country and the world at large is facing climate change. Yes. So how has the logistics firms adapted to such kind of situations? So
you're starting to see a lot of push in route optimization. Let's say, especially guys that do middle or last mile. So let's say if a truck has like 10 stops, like what is the most efficient route to use, right? And then another thing that we're starting to look into implementing is asset utilization. Whenever you look at a lot of fleet manager transport companies, let's say in Kenya, only use their trucks at 50 to 60% capacity. And that is from, poor planning, inefficiencies in the chain. But now if we can look at eco-friendly approaches into streamlining that, we can help these transport company bring that utilization to maybe 80 to 90%. That way, reducing pollution, and a lot of that is not entirely up to transportation. There's also infrastructure problems. Like you might go to the Busia or Malaba and the system is down, and now you got trucks sitting there idling for a day, and that's just unnecessary pollution. Now, but if we can put a focus on that, look at the data and use those principles, we can try to streamline these processes to remove those inefficiencies.
We've even seen not just the private sector moving to the EV vehicles, we have even seen the government trying to purchase some of them. So are we going to see in the coming future where logistics firms are using EV vehicles?
So in the context of Africa, that might take a minute because of, infrastructure is a problem. Like these trucks will need charging stations. They will need also batteries. They will need service centers. So it might take a minute for us to get there. But then now, as the world is opening up, like we know the future is African. So even all these guys, the manufacturers, they're also looking at entering the African market. And the beautiful thing about the African market is it's a blank canvas. So you can, whenever other guys are having to build on top of other infrastructure, in Africa, you can start with a clean slate. So the adoption, I think it's a resource problem. If the resources are there, I think it's possible.
And of course, when we're looking at smart logistics solutions, what impact would it have on the consumer as well as business operators?
So the biggest holdback in logistics is inefficiencies, and those inefficiencies cascade down. Like for instance, if you look at the cost of transportation, the cost of transportation in East Africa is at least 50% higher than in developed markets. So whatever you're buying, every good that you're buying right now, 40% of that cost is due to transportation. But if you compare to like developed market, it's only 10%. So now you can see if we can make our logistics more efficient, it will be able to bring these costs down. So even if you're a manufacturer in Kenya and you're trying to export, by cutting those costs and being efficient, whenever your good gets to, let's say, Houston, Texas, or whatever, it's not too expensive that people cannot buy, which is kind of like what you're seeing right now. Like Africa makes amazing stuff, but by the time it gets to Europe, it's too expensive for anyone to buy.
And with those challenges you've just cited, how sustainable is the sector?
Right now, I mean, that's why, you know, Apex Load is here, you know, because it's a big problem. You know, you talk to a lot of these guys, there's a lot of issues where you find even transporters, let's say, taking imports to, let's say, Kampala. 50 to 70% of these guys are coming back empty. And it's not because there's no cargo from Kampala. You know, there's some connectivity issues. There's also some issues at the border whereby it's very interesting that you might find a transporter opts to come back empty so they don't get stuck at the border because of the clearing process. That way, because if you come back empty, you can go to Mombasa, pick up another load. But then, you know, basically what we're trying to do is trying to bring all these stakeholders together. You know, the transporters, even government regulators, you know, KRA, for instance, because everyone has a part to play so we can streamline the industry.
And with that in mind, I'm sure you are under an association, you have an umbrella group that you front your issues.
Yes.
So are there policies or recommendations that you have made to the current administration to solve some of these challenges facing the sector?
Yes. So like I say, Apex Load, we're part of KIFWA, and KIFWA is, you know, Kenya International Freight and Warehousing Association. It's an amazing organization, and that's usually the interface between the government and the logistics industry. Yeah. And part of what we're pushing for is self-regulation. You know, I think KIFWA right now already has a bill in Parliament. Hopefully, whenever we implement some of these systems, we can try to push this through. That way, the association can regulate itself the same way like lawyers do. You know, lawyers have their organizations where they can regulate themselves. And whenever these solutions are coming from the industry, they're much well suited for the industry problem, because you're talking about guys with 20, 30 years of experience. So they're the best, in my opinion, of course, they're the best people to come up with the solutions plaguing the industry. So now, you know, the government is doing a lot of effort, you know, pushing innovation. I know President Ruto was there in Kenya Innovation Week opening up. So the government is adopting. I think it's one of the key visions for Kenya Vision 2030, I'm sorry. Yes. But then we need to empower these associations so they can come up with the solutions. Yes.
Now, as we're coming to an end, just look at that particular camera, that one, and tell the viewers, especially those learners who are coming back and trying to get into this particular sector, are there jobs in the sector itself?
So, you know, one thing that I always say, like, growing up, I think we'll be brought up with the mindset of go to school so you can get a job. But I think that's a mindset that needs to change. Like, the whole point of going to school is to learn how to solve problems. And in Africa, in Kenya, we have a lot of problems, but there's also such brilliant people. Like, you have a problem that you face every day, and you're the best one to solve it. And then whenever people can start thinking in those lines, we can actually